Repealing Obamacare is one of the single most important reasons we must win on November 8th. Have to win.
Who knew a legitimate, real issue could be deciding this election right now? Growing problems and a leaking sieve called the Affordable Care Act that is no longer affordable, that has no less than the President of the United States ready to do a conference call with his HHS secretary to figure out what to do. And we are live everywhere, not only at the White House. We'll be going there shortly with Donald Trump about to pound the issue again in Toledo, Ohio. You get a theme to his Ohio remarks here. Senator Tim Kaine is also in Ohio. We're going to be checking in on him. He will be talking about anything but health care today. But first now to Kevin Corke at the White House on what that conference call might involve. Kevin.
Hey, Neil, good day to you. You're right. The president and HHS Secretary Birdwell once again want to talk about the Affordable Care Act. Essentially, what they're really doing is making a sales pitch. Yes, they're going to talk about what's working, even talk a bit about some fixes, but most importantly, they're going to try to drive traffic to the website, healthcare.gov. They're looking to get more people, especially young, healthy people, to sign up for plans under Obamacare. Now, this afternoon at the White House press briefing, I asked Press Secretary Josh Earnest, why do you feel like so many people think the law simply isn't working?
In spite of the politically motivated attacks against the Affordable Care Act that have been launched by Republicans, the American people are benefiting from the law. And they would benefit even more from the law if Republicans would finally decide to do something other than just score political points.
All right, so did you catch that, Neil? It's not the law, it's the Republicans' fault. At least that's what they're selling at the White House press briefing. But let me just share with the folks at home some real numbers. These are increases purported to come in 2017. If you're in Arizona, you're about to get whacked if you have some of the plans under the Affordable Care Act. And I'm using affordable using quotations, which you can't see because you're looking at these numbers. Up 116%. Oklahoma up 69%. Tennessee up 63%. Even Minnesota up a whopping 59%. And so we'll look forward to hear what the president and the Health and Human Services Secretary have to say about why these increases are happening and what they plan to do about it. Of course, Republicans, we suspect, Neil, will continue to point out the fact that despite what the president said back in 2007 and in 2010 about how your prices will go down, fact is, for millions of Americans, prices could in fact be going up, and I mean big time, or big league, or as some people have said, bigly. Neil?
Bigly, that's right. That's a new word now, I guess. Kevin Corke, look forward to going back to you later in this broadcast, get a sense of what might have transpired on that conference call here. My next guest says you can't blame Republicans for this. For one thing, not a single Republican voted for it. For another, Texas Congressman Louis Gohmert said that Republicans were arguing math when they were cooking this up, that you can't promise the sun, the moon, and the healthcare stars and not expect to have to pay more for that. That is what is happening. Congressman Gohmert, very good to have you.
Always good to talk to you, Neil. But the secret of all of this goes back to a video of Barack Obama saying, look, I want socialized medicine. Single payer is not a fair description, though, actually. It's socialized, government, totally run health care. I want to get there. We can't get there in one step. And so this was the step, and you had clues all along the way. They knew that this was going to cost a fortune, that things were going to skyrocket, and they anticipated someday they would get to this point and tell the American people, well, we gave the insurance companies a chance, and now the government just needs to take it over. And they were even planning that. You know they were, because when the website didn't work, they rolled out their first plan, and that was blame the insurance companies. Fortunately, American people.
I'm going to go ahead, Congressman, and give them the benefit of the doubt on this. And I
you can't
hear me
do
out
that.
on this. Hear me out. That they were counting on more young people signing up, and that kind of prejudice sticks today. Hear me out, though, sir. That by arguing for more young people signing up and then expressing shock that more didn't. Look how they reframe the argument today. I want you to react to this. Josh Earnest at the White House saying that there's a better opportunity for young Americans who are opting to pay a penalty than sign up for a high premium insurance plan. I want you to listen to this.
The penalty that is imposed for people who don't sign up for health care is quite significant. This year it's about $700. And I think our argument is pretty simple, which is, why would you pay $700 to Uncle Sam when you don't need to?
Now, normally, they're all for people paying money to Uncle Sam. But leaving that aside, that the flip side of this, make lemonade out of the lemons you're dealt by trying to say, you might as well sign up for this thing, high premiums and all, because it sure beats paying a penalty to the government. But a lot of young people, Congressman, as you're aware of, shrewdly realize they're going to be paying much more than that $700 just for the pleasure of having this.
That's exactly right. You're exactly right, Neil. In fact, I've talked to a lot of young people who are shocked to find out, gee, they're going to pay. I've been hearing a lot about $800 and $900 in penalties. They're making $30,000 or less. And then they look, even with a subsidy that the government is paying them, some have told me they were going to be paying around $1,400, $1,500 a year, and that was with $5,000, $6,000, $7,000, $8,000 deductible. They don't have that money, and what these bright young people are shocked to find out is, gee, if I pay $1,500 for the year, I don't have $6,000. I'll never pay the deductible.
Right. So they're rolling the dice, and you and I know when you're young, you feel indestructible, and God bless them.
They're being shocked.
They don't want it. Congressman, thank you very, very much. Louis Gohmert.
It's not worth it to them.
Fast-moving developments. We're watching this. Thank you, Congressman. In the meantime, you knew this was eventually going to happen, that AT&T Time Warner merger, an $85 billion transaction that the street has yet to buy. Maybe this is the reason that Washington is going to weigh in. The Senate wants to look into the matter on December 7th. That would be after the election to see how this would all sort out and whether there are any sort of big company concerns here that the two of these together would sort of stiff out a lot of competition. But again, the CEOs of both concerns will be having to troop up to Capitol Hill to state their case. And, of course, we don't know what the makeup of the Senate will be then, do we? Of course, that will be a lame duck session handling that, but still prepare for much more of that. All right, we've got a lot more coming up, including the new WikiLeaks emails that are coming out, including a very, very ballistic Clinton staff, Hillary Clinton staff, over Bill Clinton, Inc. That she wasn't so much the problem, though she was. He was.
Let me tell you something. The American people are sick and tired of pay-to-play politics that benefits the favored few. It's exactly the kind of politics that's going to come to a crashing end when Donald Trump becomes president of the United States.
All right, here's where that pay-for-play thing comes in with Bill Clinton, more importantly, and that if you want to do something with the Clinton initiative, it helps if you have a little bit of money. It does buy influence, but it buys a lot more than that, namely panic amongst the Hillary Clinton campaign staff, and much broader than that. Ted Henry in Washington with the very latest on these leaks and what he's finding out.
Neil, good to see you. You're right. Doug Band, a former Clinton intimate, wrote a big 13-page memo alleging in 2011, we're learning from the latest WikiLeaks dump, charging that former President Bill Clinton had enriched himself by getting Clinton Foundation donors to also hire him for speeches and consulting contracts to the tune of $30 million, claiming that there were some $60 million or more that was coming in future years. You know, the Clinton officials have repeatedly said that their work instead is focused on good works around the world. When you talk about panic, that sounds like what was also happening inside the Clinton campaign back in March of 2015 when the New York Times first posted that story about the email scandal. And we're just learning in this latest document release the idea of what was going on between John Podesta and Robbie Mook as the New York Times posted that first story saying Hillary Clinton used a personal email account for official business as Secretary of State. Podesta writing to Mook, did you have any idea of the depth of this story? Mook, who is the campaign manager, responded, nope. We brought up the existence of emails in research this summer, but we're told that everything was taken care of. Pretty fascinating, gives you about an idea about even some of the most senior people not being told by Hillary Clinton or others in her inner circle about what was really happening. One of those people in the inner circle, of course, Cheryl Mills. And another email shows that while she was chief of staff at the State Department, she was discussing Clinton Foundation business, other matters with Podesta and other people on her Gmail account. And look at this, she pointedly warned in a note that if a note was sent to her state.gov account, quote, as a reminder, government email is maintained as federal records. So basically telling anyone, if you send something to me on state.gov, it's all going to be collected, so be careful. And that's why it's interesting. In this last email we want to highlight, liberal activist Neera Tanden in the summer of 2015 seemed frustrated with all of this stuff that was spilling out, writing to John Podesta, quote, "It's like the whole thing is bleeping insane." That might sum up what the frustration was in private among even some of Hillary Clinton's advisors. But remember, that's what they were saying in private. In public, they were continuously downplaying the idea that the email scandal really had any resonance, Neil.
Were they actually using the word bleeping?
No.
Okay.
There was another word in there.
It's
only 4 o'clock.
Yeah, you're right. You're exactly right. Thank you,
Thank
Ed
you.
Henry. In the meantime, this back and forth and about the foundation and who was cozy with whom, it's a big issue today. TheHill.com's Judy Kurtz on that. They've got bleeping problems, don't they, Judy, it would appear?
They've got more than bleeping problems, Neil. They got huge problems, to paraphrase from Trump's own words.
There you go.
They got a lot going on. But yeah, these emails certainly pose a problem. You know, I think with the Bill Clinton element to it, it just gives the impression, it paints this portrait of a certain greediness of getting rich off of a charitable foundation. And there's no doubt, no one is arguing with the fact that the Clinton Foundation has done a lot of good for a lot of people around the world. But getting rich off of a charity just has a bit of an ick factor to it.
You know, the one thing I noticed in a lot of this, Judy, of course, no direct emails from Hillary Clinton or directly to her, but one of the things that come out is how the staff is like frantically trying to deal with the mess in the China shop around her, and oftentimes very dismissive of her and the messes created that they are now having to deal with. But that permeates a lot of these. I mean, when I was reading through a lot of these WikiLeaks, I was startled to see that the media, of course, pounces on, obvious, as it should, the paid-for-play stuff and all, but there's just a tone to them that is like, oh my gosh, what now?
Yeah, it's not just doing damage control, and I think that's the issue here. It's actually questioning your own candidate's judgment.
Right,
I mean,
exactly.
With one
time
advisor,
and again, right? Her
time
judgment,
and time and again.
Her husband's judgment, how the two of them have created this mess. You know, it's often a theme.
Right, when your own advisor is saying you have a perpetual problem with apologizing for mistakes you've made, when saying that she has terrible instincts, that's not coming from Republicans, that's not coming from the other side, that's coming from your own people. It also plays in to Hillary Clinton's perhaps her biggest weakness, which is honesty and trust with people. A lot of voters just doubting that trustworthiness.
Now, the whole issue goes back to why having private serve in the first place. It reinforced the secretiveness there. But do you think that most Americans, and you and I are into this a little bit, you a lot more than me, you're a lot more knowledgeable about it, but that we are into this, that Americans, they get their hands around, you know, the Donald Trump tape and all that, that's easy to understand, even though I like to think that pay for play is a concept that's easy to understand and report on. It's too convoluted for most folks, although I do wonder if it's gaining some traction now. What do you think?
Well, I think that the emails up until this point have largely been overshadowed by Donald Trump. And sometimes Donald Trump is his own worst enemy. You know, at this very moment, this very second at least, he hasn't done anything extremely controversial. But that could change with his next tweet, of course. But, you know, that anything he does has overshadowed these emails. Now, he's stayed relatively disciplined this week, hasn't been making those kind of sensational headlines as he has in the past. These emails are starting to get more traction, and also the tightening of polls in states such as Florida. I think this is going to be a big issue for the Clinton camp. And
I think, as you said at the outset here, these concepts are relatively easy to grasp. They're not the old argument, oh, we can't get into that because it's so layered. There's nothing layered about it here. I mean, now it's pretty straightforward, black and white, and you can at least report on it. We're starting to see that.
Voters are pretty smart, Neil, as you know.
Absolutely. Judy, thank you very, very much. Judy Kurtz over at The Hill. Okay, we're waiting for Donald Trump. He's going to be in Ohio again. This is his second stop there. He's going to be quite busy, giving that state a great deal of attention. The state has a good chance of winning here as the polls tighten up pretty much everywhere, but not all polls. One of the things that's interesting is the wide divergence in some of these numbers, which refuels an argument my buddy Pat Cadell has had that maybe they just can't be trusted, period, after this. All right, we're watching Toledo, Ohio right now. Donald Trump set to speak to the folks there. He is resonating in a lot of polls, not all polls. And this is what confuses me, because depending on the poll you look at here, this is a good national representation, or is it? Hillary Clinton has nearly a double-digit lead there. You look at some other representations, and it's like kind of dead even. What the heck is going on? Former Democratic pollster, the man who was such a big deal in electing Jimmy Carter that after Jimmy Carter got elected, he didn't even want to shake his hand. Pat Caddell with us right now. Patrick, good to see you.
All right, I have your high school yearbook picture. I have ready to unveil at the proper moment.
Ah, touche, touche. I had Lego hair back then, which has not changed much, actually.
Yes.
But let me ask you, and you know, it's interesting. You had a lot of reaction in your last appearance. You just said there's something in the polls. There's something where you don't put much stock in them. They are
crazy right
over
now.
the map. What's going on here? And we're going to be rifling through all of them.
Oh, well, let me just start off by saying I've just taken a bunch of the national polls, including the one you just pointed out, the Suffolk USA poll. You know, and I've grouped them into bunches. The three tracking polls of Rasmussen, Investors Daily, and the LA Times. They are basically showing together a 1-point Clinton margin at the moment, a little less than 1 point.
These are national
Fox,
polls.
Yes, national polls. Fox, The Economist, and others, they're showing. There's a third one there that are showing. The Ipsos poll is showing. Reuters is showing. Those three polls together are showing margins of either 4 or 5, depending on a 2- or 3-way race. And then we have the really outliers here, the 9s and 10s, 11s. This is the margin, including the one you were talking about, right up to the AP poll at 14 points. And those margins are 11 and 11. Combine, if you average them. And then you have the outriders, which are the ABC polls. Their tracking poll, which showed 12 on Saturday, 12 on Sunday, 9 on Monday, and last night reported 6, which meant that Trump would close the gap to 3 points. They have very small additional samples, 3 points on the day before yesterday, and last night Trump had to be ahead by 3 points. They're not reporting. This stuff is madness. It is.
All right, so what's real? What do you think is really going on? I mean, even in one state, North Carolina, we have one poll taking the same rating period where you have a 1-point gap and another that is a 7-point gap. I mean, that can't be.
Somebody is very wrong. And there are lots of people who are very wrong. These state polls, are at variance with each other in the same time period. We have Florida, where now the Bloomberg poll shows Trump up ahead a couple points. We have Georgia, which is 1 point, which anyone believes that, I'll sell them a bridge. And we have Iowa, where they show it. You're up there showing it tied, and there are polls that have Trump ahead or whatever. And then there are other polls that come out in North Carolina. Look at this. There's one at 4 points. There's another at the Survey Monkey poll, as I call it, has it way up. And we have Virginia at 12.
I know.
think Virginia is solidly
I'm sorry, I'm not clear. What do you think, Pat Caddell, is going on in the country right now?
Pat Caddell thinks this. I think right now the movement is toward Trump. And some of the reasons are what you just said in your previous thing, and it will move to some more. Here's what's basically happening. If you believe this race is in double digits, then you believe that all of the attitudes that structures, the attitudes of the election structure, is the country in the right direction or wrong track, which is 60% or more negative. Is the majority is 70% in the country in decline. Bad numbers on economics, weak numbers on foreign policy, a 20-point margin against now, which is developing on Obamacare. All of this, and most importantly, do you want to continue with the Obama policies or change them? And those numbers are almost 20 points for change. Now, if you think none of that matters, then you can have a landslide like this. If you believe, as I do, that there is conflict here between a race centered on Donald Trump's personality and these larger issues, then you're going to have a closer race. And here is the kicker. If this race starts moving more, as Trump is trying to push it, to these referendum issues, are you better or worse off, then this race is going to move. And let me just say this. When you have, as the Fox poll showed, not only 3 points, but the internals of that look much better for Trump than it has. But you go back to their polls in late August, the Fox poll in early September, when they asked the question about the Clinton Foundation, and 60% of people believed that they were trading favors for money overseas. If that is the case, and we have a lot of evidence, today the media is saying they're having to cover this story, but they're saying there's no evidence. Well, Peter Schweitzer and others have evidence, and they'll lay it out, and we will see this story worsen. So if that happens, we're headed to a much closer race. It's that simple.
I really don't know where we're going here, but it sounds to you like anything could happen in the next 12 days, right?
People have to either suspend their basic attitudes and create a landslide for Hillary, or it'll be closer. That's all.
Sure. Or start drinking. Patrick, thank you very much, my friend. Pat Goodell. All right, then there's the issue of the minority vote here, and I only mention that now because the accepted wisdom is that that's Democrats. The only issue is by how big a margin. But an interesting subset in a lot of the polls, not all the polls, but is what's happening underneath and how minority voters aren't exclusively in lockstep with the Democratic candidate, and when it comes to non-white voters just as an aggregate, those percentages could be changing mightily as we speak. Niger Innis predicted this phenomenon, and it seems to be coming to pass in a number of key states. Niger, I was thinking of you as a Tea Party forward chairman here. Arizona stood out in my mind because in that state, again, a Republican state that could be tipping, we don't know, but Hispanic voters there, 1 out of 3 of them liking Donald Trump. I think that would have to be a surprise to even Donald Trump. What's happening here?
Well, I think Hispanics, African Americans, Asian Americans, just like any other American, are concerned about issues of the economy. We're concerned about issues of national security, the war on terrorism. And we're concerned about shaking up this system. I think minorities, more than anybody else, wants to end the pay-for-play corruption of Washington, D.C. And if there's any sneak preview of the kind of corruption to come, we have seen it with the what has been revealed by Wikileaks in terms of the Clinton Foundation and the games that they're playing in terms of pay-for-play. The American people...
But on a key point, Donald Trump, when he has these urban renewal speeches and goes into the inner cities and all, more than many Republican candidates, I think in recent memory, he addresses black voters specifically and says, what the hell have you got to lose? What do you think of that?
I think it's a very powerful line. I think what he says is that we've got issues of crime we've got to deal with. We've got economic revitalization. And here's what has resonance in the black community and other minority communities, which is that the Democrat Party, which has been a beneficiary of upwards to 90+% of the black vote, has taken that vote and our people for granted for nearly half a century, for actually in some cases over half a century. And if you want to issue a protest, here's your opportunity to do so. And I think the black vote in particular, minority vote in general, but the black vote in particular in states like North Carolina, Ohio, and Florida, and in wild card states such as Pennsylvania and Michigan, the degree to which the black community comes out in droves for the Democrat Party is going to determine this election.
Wow. Well, you know, if you think about it, you're the Republican candidate, and you can peel off more of minority voters than is typically the case, a percent or 2 or 3, it could swing the election.
No question. Look at North Carolina, where African-American millennials, Hillary Clinton is barely getting 60% of that vote, which comprises up to over a fifth of the vote in North Carolina. If that remains the same, and that's reflected in the turnout numbers and in how African-American millennials in North Carolina vote, then Donald Trump will win North Carolina.
Wow. Niger, thank you very, very much. Again, waiting to
Thank
hear
you,
from Donald Trump speaking in Toledo. But another successful sort of a strategy on the part of Mr. Trump, even though the media might not like it, is, well, attacking the media, because they kind of framed the debate. And Donald Trump says unfairly. And now evidence that, well, he's right after this. All right, Amazon is having a world of hurt. Its shares are in after-hours trading. It missed some earnings estimates, revenue estimates. Furthermore, telegraphing the holiday shopping season, maybe not so great. That stock, which had been running up amid talk that it was easily going to hit the $1,000 a share, down about $40 right now as we speak. It is a pricey issue, though. But right now, Amazon telegraphing potential problems for the holiday shopping period. We'll keep an eye on it. Well, it's a relentless theme of Trump's that he doesn't get a fair shake, and given the disproportionate number of negative stories he generates versus Hillary Clinton, they're not even in the ballpark here. Sarah Westwood, right now, joining us at the Washington Examiner, Julian Melcher of Heat Street, Elizabeth Harrington of the Washington Free Beacon. Elizabeth, does he have a point when you just look at the sheer number of hit pieces on him? You know, a lot more than pieces on Hillary Clinton.
Absolutely. I think he has an incredible point to make. Everyone knows the media is biased, and what we've seen with these hacked emails released by Wikileaks, it just reinforces the fact that we know that the media is willing to work with the Hillary campaign to give her positive coverage. And you just see it when you turn into the other networks. We have huge bombshell stories about Hillary Clinton, her husband enriching himself through the Clinton Foundation, the FBI investigation that really wasn't an investigation at all. Those get no coverage in the nightly news. They get about 2 minutes, 30 seconds. It's all Donald Trump and something he may have said.
Well, that's what he says. And now I'm one of those, and Jillian, maybe you can help me with this, that says, all right, if this stuff comes out, even 11-year-old videotape, and then women come out of the woodwork, I think it's incumbent upon the media certainly to question the timing of those women coming out of the woodwork. But it is a good story. It is something you follow up on. You do your due diligence. What I'm saying is, where's the same media effort to do the due diligence and try to get in the same ballpark of coverage of very legitimate Hillary Clinton stories and WikiLeaks developments and maybe different things she tells bankers behind closed doors versus what she says about them on a debate stage with Bernie Sanders? What do you think?
Sure. There's no question that both of these candidates have records that are completely indefensible. But I think what we're looking at with Donald Trump is he's had a strategy throughout this entire election season that you get out of one crisis by creating another. He's very much fueled this. And even in cases where Hillary Clinton...
How has he fueled it? Just by having to justify 11-year-old tapes?
No, I'll give you a pretty good example. So if we look in June, when some of the stuff with Hillary Clinton's emails, the State Department probe was coming out, he interrupted that by attacking Judge Curiel. He couldn't let her have the limelight. He ended up interrupting it, attacking.
I see what you're saying.
And I think because of that, he can't really, I mean, if you don't want to happen, don't say it.
No, I see. I understand that. But Sarah, that's where I think the media should come forward and be aware. All right, we've given a lot of time to this story. This other story seems like a pretty good story. Let's do that.
Exactly, and that's why I think this Donald Trump riff against the media is more effective than what we saw in the primaries. During the primaries, we saw Donald Trump go after individual reporters and outlets for negative stories about himself that he thought were unfair. Now, in these final weeks of the election, we see him indicting the entire media as an institution for its comparative coverage of his opponent. Instead of nitpicking coverage about himself, we see him pointing out the very real fact that the mainstream media has poured, relatively speaking, far less time and energy pursuing negative stories about Clinton, and that speaks to his larger campaign theme of the system as a whole being, quote, rigged.
But I think it's been rigged in his favor in a lot of ways. If you look at the earned media,
think about it.
More than $2 billion.
But think about it. A lot of these email exchanges that are coming to light involve many in the media who are trying to curry favor with Hillary Clinton or her people. So you can understand why some in the establishment media have been reluctant to get them out, because it embarrasses them. But it does seem, and maybe I'll touch on this with you, Elizabeth, that there's no zeal on the part of these folks to level that playing field. Now, I know the media tends to give overwhelmingly and support Democrats and Democratic candidates. Fine, if that's how you're going to be. But do you have to reflect it then in your editorial product?
No, of course you should be fair. And I think throughout this, we've seen the media propping up Donald Trump, giving him a lot of free time. And then all of a sudden, when he's the nominee, you see this barrage of attacks. And you see it very clearly. I mean, look at the New York Times story that they did, an 8-month investigation in Trump's treatment of women. And they said, oh, he was crossing the line. They didn't have a single source in there that said he touched them inappropriately or anything like that. And then suddenly, 3 weeks before the campaign, then they're running all these stories about all these accusers coming out of the woodwork. I mean, the timing is very, coincidental to say the least. And I think it reflects on this bias.
No, I think
an agenda.
They didn't seem to care who dumped these tax records of Donald Trump's, but they certainly care about vetting anything else that has to do with emails. You know, it just seems weird.
You know, I want to point out, first of all, the New York Times was the one that broke some of the most damaging Clinton scandals. If you look at what was going on with the uranium deal, some of the email things, they were the first on that. So I've got to give them credit for that.
So you think this coverage is fair in the New York Times? You think it's fair in the Washington Post? You think it's balanced in these mainstream media?
What I do not think is fair is for instance, Breitbart to be collaborating with an Occupy Wall Street reporter to be disrupting Rubio events and giving that coverage. So I think we've got bias going both ways. It's tough in an election where you have two candidates that are awful.
But the proof is in the final published pudding, right? And, you know, maybe for some reason go after Trump. I'm not dismissing that. I'm not saying don't. I'm saying just show a fraction of the interest.
He could have prevented a lot of this, though, by just being a little bit wiser about what he says.
If you said that about a woman accusing a man of untoward stuff, and you're kind of blaming the victim there.
No, I think he has habitually been unwise and dominated the headlines because of it.
Press for the bad press.
I don't think he's the victim. I think he's been in many cases a beneficiary. He owes his celebrity to the media, in many cases the left-leaning media.
That, my friend, is blaming the victim, and you would hate it if it were the other way around, right?
No, I disagree, but
okay. Thank you all very, very much. In the meantime, I do want to keep you up to date on some other things. Ash Carter talking about right now the battle that's going on in the Middle East and elsewhere, not only to retake Raqqa, but Mosul and all of that with General Kane. All right, Defense Secretary Ash Carter says, it won't be too long, maybe just weeks, where U.S. and allies are ready to drive ISIS out of Raqqa and, again, require Mosul. Retired 4-star Army General Jack Kane here on that. Close, very, very close. Do you agree?
No, not really.
Yeah.
I think that's kind of aspirational, to be frank about it. The forces that occupy Raqqa, this is the headquarters of ISIS. This is where most of their forces actually are. Those who are not going to fight and stay in Mosul will also go to Raqqa. And we don't have the combat force that we have in Iraq. In Iraq, it's close to around 30,000 that are participating in this attack on Mosul. Mosul, admittedly, a much larger city. But what we have in Syria is pale by comparison. We've got a few hundred Sunni Syrian Arabs and a few thousand, and that's all, Syrian Kurds, assisted by some of our best troops, some special operations forces.
What is our role there? What are we doing?
We're trainers and advisors.
Just trainers and advisors?
We help a little bit more with air power.
Yeah.
We're calling in air power for them, and we've got some guys that are right down there. They are probably as close in the fight as any of our advisors are, and they have been for some time. But that's not enough combat power, not even close, to take Raqqa. So we're not a few weeks away.
Now, this has come up, and not surprisingly, in a presidential election year, General. I know you eschew these topics, as you should. But one of the things that Donald Trump has mentioned, we are seeing the likes of General Patton and General Eisenhower spinning in their graves by pre-announcing what we're doing. What did you make of that?
Well, there's some general truth to that. We talk far too much in advance of all of our military operations, and in a degree of specificity.
I assume like we didn't do that with Normandy, right?
Hardly. Well, everybody knew there was invasion coming.
Right.
Strategically, there was an invasion. What they didn't know tactically and operationally, when and where.
But we do it. I think the argument, General, I think you've told me this too, is that to help average folks in the area, citizens, men, women, to get out of harm's way?
Well, some of that is done. We did that initially in Fallujah, not this last Fallujah, but the previous Fallujah, when the U.S. was leading the operation. We advertised it because we wanted the people to get out. Very similar to
but that also tells the bad guys what you're doing, right?
The other thing we do too much of, we talk too much after we conduct an operation, and we give far too many details, particularly what our special operation forces are doing. That makes no sense.
Why do we do that?
We never used to speak about this. This started after Osama bin Laden was killed, and the administration began to talk. And if you recall, Secretary of Defense Gates was furious with people in the White House giving out details of that attack, given the fact that we're going to continue to do operations like
that
this.
We're still in that neck of the woods, right?
Absolutely. The other thing, though, in fairness, these operations that we're conducting, like Mosul is a case in point, the terrain, open vistas, these are desert open areas with limited road networks. There's no way that we could surprise that force. We're going to come up those roads and they're going to see us coming days in advance of anything we do. We have to get logistics in place and then conduct an assault.
But in the meantime, ISIS operatives, let's say in some cases, they start killing villagers. They start creating the same fear that made them such a force that had Iraqi forces in the past running the other way.
Yeah. Well, know this. I mean, when they took Mosul and the shock that it was to all of us to see the Iraqis leaving, ISIS knew this the minute they seized that town. At some point, the Iraqi army, likely assisted by Americans, was coming back. It was just going to be a matter of time. Now, they probably thought in less than a year, but here we are almost 2.5 years later coming back.
General, it's so good seeing you in the flesh. He has a handshake. He could break your hand. You know that. Okay. Right.
I'm kind and gentle.
General, thank you very, very much. All right, we are getting the Clinton campaign finally reacting to these latest leaks. It's how they react that's rather telling. The latest after this. All right, say this about Hillary Clinton. She is blessed with some incredible surrogates, probably no more so and no more popular than Michelle Obama today, but none of this got in the way of the drip, drip, drip of these WikiLeaks emails that are coming to light and other correspondence. Jennifer Griffin with the latest on that and how Team Clinton is dealing with it all. Jennifer.
Well, Neil, we've received a statement from the campaign, and they are pushing back hard. In fact, they're criticizing the press for publishing these WikiLeaks for being agents of the Russian government. Here's a statement we received from Glenn Kaplan, Hillary Clinton's spokesman, just moments ago. Quote, "We are still not confirming the authenticity of individual emails hacked by the Russian government to influence the election by weaponizing WikiLeaks." That from Glenn Kaplan, her spokesman, who went on a Twitter rampage accusing Trump of cheering on what he called Russia's WikiLeaks propaganda. He quoted former Secretary of State Madeleine Albright, who said that, quote, "Donald Trump has been turned into a useful idiot by the Russians." And former acting director of the CIA, Mike Morell, who supports Clinton, he concluded Trump is an unwitting agent of the Russians. Trump's actions as Putin's puppet, Morell said, have gone from bizarre to disqualifying. Now, we also, my colleague Mike Emanuel, received a statement from Teneo. That's the PR firm that is associated with the Clinton Foundation, run by Doug Band, who we've heard about in these WikiLeaks emails. And Teneo says that they simply ask their clients to donate to the Clinton Foundation because the foundation does a lot of good. They never, they say, according to Doug Band and Teneo, profited from that relationship. Back to you, Neil.
Are they worried that the more this stuff kind of comes out, dribs and drabs, the more it will register? Or are they still saying, outside of folks like you and me and the media now and then, you know, trying to pick them apart, they have nothing to worry about?
Well, I think what they're saying, and senior officials who I talked to from the Clinton campaign say that they think voters are not paying attention to these WikiLeaks. Right. Now, there are some polls that suggest that that things are tightening, and so I think that WikiLeaks is having an effect, but the campaign is just trying to really play out the clock. Neil?
All right, Jennifer, thank you very, very much. Jennifer Griffin following Team Clinton here. We're going to be looking at that in a lot more detail. Don't forget we are live on Saturday as well, but of course, show tomorrow as well on this, but telegraphing how all this is falling out. Latest polls, latest numbers, latest Wall Street concerns. See you tomorrow.